One.
And we are live at 11:05. Here we are on BC. This is Spirit Cars, and in case you didn't know, we build hot rod cars here. Have been doing it for a long time. How long have we been doing this?
94.
94. So Spirit's been around since 94. I've been doing it forever, so I've been doing it since about 74. And Josh, the voice of Spirit Cars, behind the camera. We had a couple guys here from East Texas yesterday. I guess they were watching the show. I walked up and they recognized me, so they got a Model A.
Model A coupe and
Model
a
A coupe, and
perimeter frame that we had in
picked up
stock.
the frame. They're going to do it themselves, and so anyway, they picked up the frame and they're doing it themselves. So we got a 1934 going together. I showed you yesterday. We went over the interior of it, and I was looking at it here today. We got the chassis coming together, and this is a little bit farther than just a perimeter frame. So I thought maybe today we'd go over just some of the components on a chassis. If you get a perimeter frame, you can always put this stuff together yourself, and you do not have to have a jig table, but making sure things are square and you know, lined up right and your wheelbases are right. I mean, that's all important. You don't have to have, like I said, jigs to do that. So I think I'm just going to go over today. We've got a dropped axle. This is a 4-inch. Is it 4-inch or 6-inch? 4-inch I-beam. And this is our 34. If I'm working in the fiberglass department, I'm looking at everything upside down and inside out. Well, here in the chassis department, I'm just looking at everything upside down. So this frame is flipped over upside down in the jig. I had the rails built. Everything is square. Everything's level. Not level, but on a plane if it needs to be. So I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to see this. Again, reference everything as being upside down. So you've got here's the extra cross member right here. So you've got a cross member, and there's several different available. We offer one. There's several companies that offer one. There's, you know, and they're generally going to fit where they go. If you got to cut it out, that's fine. Or on Larry's car, the Tall T, we just used a cross member, and we wanted to lower it. So what we did, we lowered the whole axle and put it on the bottom of it. And where this one, the top of this will be welded to the top of the frame. You can see that there. Now you got to make sure, and a lot of times it's built in, I don't know if you can see that, but it's built into the cross member. You need about 5 to 6 degrees of an angle on your front end. So it's, you can see it's, I mean, if you catch this from the side, you see how it's leaning here, Josh?
Back?
So we're leaning 5
Yeah, I see it.
5 to 6 degrees. And make sure you've got that in there, and you just get that by cocking your cross member here, but it should be built into the cross member also. But if you're going to put a cross member in, you're going to put your front axle in, this is the adjustment you have to have. So we got the cross member welded in. We've got a panhard here. You can see it comes across. There's different ways to do that. And what this panhard does, if you can see these shackles here, once we get a little pressure on it, it's going to come down. But it can swing just that little bit on the frame. So your front end can swing just a little bit. What happens with this panhard rod, that does not let the frame and the axle swing, and it just goes up and down. It'll swing on this arc right here. So be aware you will need a panhard rod. This one here we're using a half rack, probably Unisteer is a brand I would imagine. So you can see it steers only on one side, and this would be the left side of the car, not the right side since it's upside down. But you've got a steering arm coming off the bottom of your spindle. And these also are 37 to 41 spindles on our on this drop axle. We use Super Bell.
Everything's U.S. made.
U.S. made on the axle. You just be somewhat aware. Some of the spindles are a little cheaper made, but they make a real nice axle. So we've got the lower steering arm, and since we're going with this, which would be a cross steer setup, cross steer versus a slingshot, you're going to have two holes here on your steering arm on your left hand side. So the first one on the very top of it is what's going to steer your car. And the second one goes in here, and just your drag link will come across to the steering arm on your right hand side. So your left hand wheel actually steers your right hand wheel. So once you're going back and forth, that's how it's attached. On your there's a thing called an Ackerman angle. If you could look at this from the front here, I don't think we're going to go necessarily into the geometry of why it works. I'll just tell you it's real simple. See the angle of this steering arm? Mm-hmm. You see the angle of this steering arm? The theory is if you follow that steering arm up to me, and I've got my rear end here, you want the angle of your two steering arms to angle back to be basically the center of your pumpkin. It doesn't have to be exact, but you should be at least in that general area. And if you looked at these, and if I ran straight lines, I would have a triangle from my two steering arms going to the center of the pumpkin. And I guess some guy named Ackerman figured that out however many years ago. It's been a long time. But what happens if these are my two wheels and I'm turning around a corner, if my wheels turn the same amount, what's going to happen? One of them's going to scrub and the other one's going to track. Basically, they'll both scrub. So what you need to happen when you turn left, your left tire, the inside one, needs to turn more of an angle, and your right tire, the outside one, needs to turn a little bit less of an angle. So if that makes sense, I'll exaggerate it, but to go around the arc of that turn, your inside tire is going to be turning at a stronger angle than the outside tire. Now what's going to happen if you turn right, it needs to be just the opposite. So you turn right, your right tire is going to need to have a more severe angle, and your left tire just a little bit less. So when you go around that turn, both your tires are not scrubbing. They're just following the arc of whatever the turn it is that you are doing. So just an FYI, you don't need to have the geometry, and you don't need to have a big formula and a pencil and paper. If you just eyeball your steering arms and run them in a triangle back, and I bet you Google that, I bet somebody's got all kinds of information on that, and they'll explain the theories of why it works and the formulas if you want to figure that out. But I'm just telling you, that's pretty much, if you give it one of these, I can make a car go pretty straight down the road with one of these. Now when you get into super high speeds and if you're racing, or if you want to be drag racing, and you're looking for hundredths of a second and handling that's just above and beyond, that's a little different world. But for what we do, I mean, I don't believe we're compromising anything. We're getting a hot rod ride out of it, a safe ride. It's a good front end. It's a front end. It's a straight axle, not a straight axle, but a dropped axle, but I-beam axle. Next time we get one that's got independent front suspension, which we do quite often, it's going to give you a little bit smoother ride and maybe a little bit better handling. But this is for years and years and years. This is what we had. We're not reinventing the wheel here. We're just maybe making a few improvements on what it was. So this one here has a 4-link setup. Big issue on your front 4-link. Now, a 4-link versus a radius rod, it's going to give if these are both radius rods, if you hit a bump on your right fender or your right wheel, it's going to want to hit your left, or move your left wheel up a little bit. There's not going to be so much travel back and forth in your axle. It's going to want to just up and down with radius rods. It will still flex, and it still has a fine ride. So a 4-link is going to give you a little bit better suspension in that way. One of the key things you want to really remember, and I think the formula is like on the back, 60-40. You don't want any one to be more than 60% or 40% smaller than the other one when you're doing in the back. The front, just make them the same length. make sure they're parallel. You can see these are parallel here. He's got it bolted up, but make sure your radius rods are parallel. I'm sorry, make sure your four-link is parallel. Pretty important. Just make sure it's parallel. Keep them about the same size as you can. On the I-beam axle, you've got two ways to do it, and this got the bat wing here, they call it. This is a spring over setup. And what that means, you'll hear spring over, spring behind. A lot of T-buckets will have spring behind. And with this being spring over, that means the spring is directly on top of the axle. Now if I go spring behind, I could do that. It would move the spring behind it, and I could actually lower the spring a little bit, which actually lower your car. And it would give it a different look. And we're looking at that when we do the tall T, which will be showing again here in the next few days. So that I'll probably highlight the difference. Next time we show the tall T, and this one will be on the ground, we may just go both of them at the same time so you can get a real good idea of what the difference between the two is. Shock, and again on this Super Bell axle, it's components. You just bolt it together. It's got the mounts for the shock. All this just bolts together with components. And it's got the hydraulic shock. We've got a shock mount here. This one happens to be bolted on. So again, on ours, we've got, you don't have the part on here, but for locating all our brackets, we know where it is. It's the same every time. It fits our body. Things are around here. I refer to how Spirit does it. That's not the only way that you have to do it, but I know that when we mount this brake pedal here, there's a jig holds it. We put the brake pedal, it mounts the bracket. When the pedal comes up, I know it's going to come through the floor where we want it to come through on the Spirit 34. This is pretty much generally a 1934 Ford, but it has been modified. Even our bodies, being chopped, and a lot of times the doors will be flush mounted, and it's a 23 appearing, it's a Model A appearing, it's a 34 appearing, a 32 appearing. We're just going for the look of the old car, but we want hot rods. 34, we get a little extreme with our cross member, but not really. I mean, this is just a nice cross member section in here. It looks really cool if you get under the car, you get it all painted nice. Now we do it both ways, but it's nice if you have a removable cross member for your transmission. Just be aware when you're building your chassis, if you do need to pull your motor and transmission, think ahead to repairs. You can get it in, and a lot of times what will happen here is this chassis will be done, the brakes will be bled, it'll be painted, it'll be ready to go, we'll put the motor into it, the motor will be done, the transmission will be in it, it'll be all set up, then we'll walk up with a painted body and drop the painted body on, bolt it together and start wiring and go from there. Well, a year, 2 years, 5 years down the road, say you have to do a rebuild on your transmission, or for whatever reason you need to pull your motor and transmission out. You don't want to have to disassemble your whole car again just to take a transmission out. So sometimes it's a good idea to have a cross member you can unbolt, and sometimes it really doesn't matter. You can lift it up and slide the whole thing forward and out in front of your car. Take the radiator out if you need to, or whatever you need to do there, and just slide it out. No big deal. Looks like Sean is getting ready to put it. This one's going to have a 9-inch rear end under it, and a triangulated 4-link setup. And when you have a triangulated 4-link setup, just the issue of two triangles, that rear end is not going to go back and forth, so you will not need a panhard rod. So in a triangulated situation, you don't need a panhard rod. Just the shocks will go back here, but I think we'll just save this for another day. Again, front end, you can do it. Like the folks yesterday, what was his name from East Texas?
Leslie.
Leslie went home with his perimeter chassis, or his perimeter frame, I mean, and he'll set up his front axle. and he'll set up his rear end, and just make sure your welds are good. Don't make sure you get enough amperage, a welder that's going to do a good job. Don't think that your weld is good if you got a snotty weld and you grind it and make it look pretty with a grinder. Just don't do it. The last thing you want is for a bracket like this to fall off. And you can kind of see Sean's welds. He does a good job. These are looks like it's MIG'd. There's a lot of the parts that will be TIG'd. So we use both a TIG and a MIG, whatever's appropriate for the thing we're doing. On this, you can see there's some places where he'll just tack it on, just to make sure things are going to fit afterwards. Sometimes it's fully welded. A lot of times it'll need to come off of this jig. Flip it over, turn it this way, turn it that way. Don't leave, just because you've got it all welded nice when it's up, sitting the right way, or all welded nice when it's upside down. Flip that thing over, flip it up sideways, clamp it to a table. Make it easy for you to weld. If you weld it upside down, it's not easy. I mean, it's doable, but a certified welder better be able to do it. But if you don't put a lot of hours in welding, make it as easy as you can for yourself. Make sure the area is clean to weld. Grind it. Make sure your flux is going. A lot of times, if you've got, say, a MIG, and you're working outside, which is, it's perfectly fine. I've seen some great cars built outside, even outside in the driveway. But if it's a little bit windy, remember that wind is going to blow that the gas, which is the flux. It'll blow it out of that surface, so your weld won't be so nice. I don't know if anybody, we are live, and I've mentioned before, if you want to be notified when we go live, there's a little, I guess, checkbox or something on the...
Yeah, a little follow box.
A little follow box. If you're watching us live, you can hit follow, and that will tell you when we go live. Now, if you're watching this after it's been uploaded, or from the website, or however you might see it, you may be looking at it a year, 2 years, 5 years from now. That follow box will not be there. You can only check that while we're live. And we try to do this again every day at 11:05. We're here not to be a drama show. We have plenty of drama. There's guaranteed. There's no lack of drama in the shop, but that's not what we're about. We're here to help you build your car and accomplish your dream. And we'd be glad to be part of that process. We sell from a T-bucket to a 34 and everything in between. And we've got, didn't you say we've got a couple people that didn't buy their 32s from us, bringing their...
Yeah, for interiors.
They're bringing them here for interiors, so that's coming. We will do interiors, and we do all kinds of work. We're not totally set up to be a restoration shop. I mean, we can do that, but it's not our thing, so we don't push that. But a lot of times the customer will send back a car that they bought somewhere else. And for some reason, we just kind of get into our little groove, which is in the 30s and 20s and 30s, and we enjoy it. We kind of have a pretty thorough understanding of what's been done and what can be done, so we'd be glad to help you out if you bring it here, or if you're just watching this video and we can give you some helpful tips. So, we have come to the yellow book. I usually finish out with, and I need to find the Coffee Break Contemplations. It is somewhere around here, and I have no idea where, but a friend of mine, the Hot Rod Man, Ernie Gilcrease, wrote a couple of these books. They're not proverbs, but they're little sayings by the Hot Rod Man. I usually end the show with this. Be a mirror that reflects only beauty, and everyone that looks at you will like what they see. So there's the words from Hot Rod Man today. Hopefully we give you a little bit of information here. I don't know if all the tips I gave you, maybe the best one would be make sure your welds are good. I mean, even if you got it, it's not lined up, your car may go down the road sideways, but it's better than a part coming off and your car going into the ditch. So have a good day, and we will see you tomorrow.